Third letter. We have a God who is infinitely gracious and knows all our wants. I always thought that he would reduce you to extremity. He will come in his own time, and when you least expect it. Hope in him more than ever. Thank him with me for the favors he does you, particularly for the fortitude and patience which he gives you in your afflictions. It is a plain mark of the care he takes of you. Comfort yourself then with him, and give thanks for all. I admire also the fortitude and bravery of M. God has given him a good disposition and a good will, but there is in him still a little of the world, and a great deal of youth. I hope the affliction which God has sent him will prove a wholesome remedy to him, and make him enter into himself. It is an accident very proper to engage him to put all his trust in him who accompanies him everywhere. Let him think of him the oftenest he can, especially in the greatest danger. A little lifting up the heart suffices, a little remembrance of God, one act of inward worship, though upon a march and sword in hand, are prayers which, however short, are nevertheless very acceptable to God, and far from lessening a soldier's courage in occasions of danger, they best serve to fortify it. Let him then think of God the most he can. Let him accustom himself by degrees to this small but holy exercise. Nobody perceives it, and nothing is easier than to repeat often in the day these little internal adorations. Recommend to him, if you please, that he think of God the most he can, in the manner here directed. It is very fit, and most necessary for a soldier, who is daily exposed to the dangers of life, and often of his salvation. I hope that God will assist him, and all the family, to whom I present my service, being theirs and yours.
You summoned me, Uncle.
I did indeed. I have been reading your latest report.
Yes?
Yes, you wrote that you have great hopes that the patient's religious phase is dying away.
Yes, Uncle, I'm most encouraged.
Are you? I always thought the training college had gone to pieces since they put old Slubgob at the head of it, and now I'm sure of it.
Is something wrong?
Has no one ever told you about the law of undulation?
Undulation.
Humans are amphibians, half spirit and half animal. The enemy's determination to produce such a revolting hybrid was one of the things that determined our father to withdraw his support from him. As spirits, they belong to the eternal world, but as animals, they inhabit time. This means that while their spirit can be directed to an eternal object, their bodies, passions, and imaginations are in continual change. For to be in time means to change. Their nearest approach to constancy, therefore, is undulation, the repeated return to a level from which they repeatedly fall back, a series of troughs and peaks. If you had watched your patient carefully, you would have seen this undulation in every department of his life. His interest in his work, his affection for his friends, his physical appetites all go up and down. As long as he lives on Earth, periods of emotional and bodily richness and liveliness will alternate with periods of numbness and poverty. The dryness and dullness through which your patient is now going are not, as you fondly suppose, your workmanship. They are merely a natural phenomenon which will do us no good unless you make a good use of it.
Oh, then what am I to do?
You must ask what use the enemy wants to make of this trough period, and then do the opposite.
You want me to guide my patient to a peak?
Yes. It may surprise you, inexperienced as you are, to learn that in his efforts to get permanent possession of a soul, the enemy relies on the troughs, even more than on the peaks. Some of his special favorites have gone through longer and deeper troughs than anyone else.
Why would the enemy do that?
Did they not teach you about this at college? Look, to us, a human is primarily food.
Yes.
Our aim is the absorption of its will into ours, the increase of our own area of selfhood at its expense. But the obedience which the enemy demands of men is quite a different thing. One must face the fact that all the talk about his love for men and his service being perfect freedom is not, as one would gladly believe, mere propaganda. It is an appalling truth. He really does want to fill the universe with a lot of loathsome little replicas of himself, creatures whose life on its miniature scale will be qualitatively like his own, not because he has absorbed them, but because their wills freely conform to his. We want cattle who can finally become food. He wants servants who can finally become sons. We want to suck it in. He wants to give it out. We are empty and would be filled. He is full and flows over. Our aim is a world in which our Father below has drawn all other beings into himself. The enemy wants a world full of beings united to him, but still distinct.
How distasteful.
So it is. And this is where the troughs come in. They are periods when the enemy is growing the vermin into the sort of creature he wants it to be.
But how? It makes no sense.
In his warped way of thinking, it does. Surely you've wondered, as all demons have, why the enemy does not make use of his power to be sensibly present to human souls.
It was a theory we discussed at the college. Why didn't he, if he could, show himself to humans in any degree he chose at any moment in order to win their permanent allegiance?
And you concluded what?
Well, nothing actually. We determined that the enemy is a fool for not showing himself more clearly.
Did your instructors not explain that the irresistible and the indisputable are the two weapons which the very nature of his scheme forbids him to use? Merely to override a human will, as his felt presence in any but the faintest degree would certainly do, would be for him useless. He will not ravish, he will only woo, don't you see? His ridiculous idea is to eat the cake and have it. The creatures are to be one with him, but yet themselves. Merely to cancel or assimilate them will not serve his purposes.
But this isn't always the case. I mean, he does, from time to time.
Yes. He is prepared to do a little overriding at the beginning. He will set them off with communications of his presence, which, though faint, seem great to them with emotional sweetness and give them easy conquest over temptation. But he never allows this to go on for long. Sooner or later, he withdraws those supports and incentives, if not in fact, at least from their conscious experience. He leaves the creature to stand up on its own legs, to carry out from the will alone duties which have lost all relish. So, now you see the importance of the trough periods.
Do I?
Don't you? We can drag our patients along by continual tempting because we design them only for our banquet table, and the more their will is interfered with, the better. But he cannot tempt to virtue as we do to vice. He wants them to learn to walk and must therefore take away his hand. And if only the will to walk is really there, he is pleased even with their stumbles. Do not be deceived, Wormwood. Our cause is never more in danger than when a human no longer desires, but still intends to do our enemy's will. Even as the human looks around a universe from which every trace of him seems to have vanished, even when he asks why he has been forsaken, with all that, he still obeys.
But surely the troughs afford us opportunities as well.
Oh, they do. They do. Come with me, and I'll show you.